So it was around 3 o'clock I decided I wanted to get in the birth pool. I've labored before in the water with my first son, and I found it really good for that time. Not so much to take away the pain during the contractions, but to at least help me relax in between contractions. And I found that to be the case again. It definitely cut down on the intensity for me of the contraction, but it did not take them away. I loved being able to float and being able to change positions. So I started kind of actually kneeling on my legs and on my knees, and then I was kneeling but leaning over the edge of the birth pool, and I quite liked that position for most of that labor. And I also liked that my husband could still access my back, so I still wanted just the heat on my lower back from his hands. Yeah, I just tried a lot of different positions, whatever felt right at the time, and all I really wanted was some water and my husband's hands on my back and a cold cloth to press my face into. So I just draped it over the side of the pool, and during contractions I'd press my face into the cold cloth on the side of the pool. And that seemed to work for me. And then around 3:30, all of a sudden I felt the urge to push. And I was at that time leaning over the side, once again kneeling, and I kind of had the start of the pushy feeling. So I went ahead and pushed, and obviously as I was doing it, telling the midwife that, oh, I feel like I have to push. And then the next contraction came, and I didn't feel like I had to push, so I didn't know quite what that was about. And I think she thought that maybe I was pushing a little too soon. But the next contraction again, all of a sudden I had a big urge to push, and I started pushing. And around 32 minutes after 3, my water broke, and that's the first time my water is broken spontaneously. With my first, they ruptured the membranes after about an hour and a bit of pushing, and my son was born 20 minutes later. And with my second, they broke it pretty early because they had to put the internal fetal scalp monitor on. And so, yeah, I've never had it break spontaneously before, and it was strange. I didn't expect it to be so much pressure when it popped and the weird gush. But I think my favorite experience in that was my husband saying, I was like, I think my water just broke. And my husband's like, well, there's floaties in the water now. And I just thought it was really funny that he even bothered to notice that. Yeah, it was definitely an interesting experience, having my water break. And then the other big difference with pushing for me this time is usually with my other kids, I had a very definite break in between urges. So I would have the urge to push, I'd push, and then in between I could talk normally and I could relax and it didn't hurt. And with Arlo, it was so strange. It was a constant need to push, and it was only that sometimes the urge got way more intense and I pushed harder. And so I never really got that break, so I found it way more intense. And I don't know if that was because I was in the water this time or if it's just how Arlo was coming down. But yeah, I didn't enjoy pushing this time as I have with the other boys. And then eventually kneeling on my knees was way too intense too. Like, it felt way too hard on my perineum and did not feel comfortable and didn't feel right. So my midwife encouraged me to lean back, and it was probably my favorite feeling of being supported the entire labor was just trying to move back. And I naturally kind of wanted to lie on my left side, which is how I've delivered both my other boys when I've been in a bed. So yeah, I found it really funny that the muscle memory was still there, and I still ended up giving birth on my left side, just in water this time. And so, but as I was getting back onto my left side, I just started to move and just felt that I was able to fall back into the arms of my doula and my husband. And it was just such a great feeling to just be able to fall back and surrender and know that they were there to catch me. So by the time that I had fallen back on my left side, it was very clear that the baby was crowning. And I gave another couple pushes and then asked for my sons to be brought in. And yeah, so they came in with my sister and my sister-in-law, who I hadn't just like disgust with her being at the birth beforehand. I think she was a little shell shocked at how quick things were going, because the look on her face when she walked in was just, she just had her jaw on the floor, but not in a bad way. It was definitely in a, I can't believe things are going so fast and then I'm watching you have a baby kind of way. So it was really fun. She's not had children of her own, and I think a lot of her friends' birth experiences have not been the most positive. So to see that she was going to see a natural birth and an undisturbed birth was really great to let her have that opportunity. But like I said, we hadn't talked about it beforehand, whether or not she could or should be invited in, and so I was really glad that she just kind of invited herself in, because it didn't bother me in the end who was there. Yeah, so the boys just watched, and before long, the baby's head was out, and then he had his one arm kind of came out, and he did the rotation as the midwife was checking for the cord, and then she told me to reach down and take my baby out. So this is the other strange thing. I've never caught one of my own babies before, and as I reached down, he had both his arms out, and with the next push, I really thought the rest of him was going to slide out. And so I had my arms kind of hooked under his arms, my hands, sorry, hooked under his arms. And I thought with the next push he would come all the way out, and he only came out to about his hips. And so the baby was just sitting there, and I felt a little, like, I thought, oh, well, it's like, I just didn't expect him. I thought he would just come out in one fluid motion. And so with the next urge, he came right out and came right up on my chest. And the one thing I remember right away is he had not a lick of vernix on him anywhere, none on his head or in his folds, like in his armpits or on his arms or legs, but his back was covered in it. And I mean, like half a centimeter thick vernix, and it was the only place, was all over his back. So that made me laugh a lot. And then, yeah, we just hung out and got to know each other for a while, and after about 5 or 10 minutes we checked to see what the baby's gender was, and we found out that we had a third little boy. And you know, I think everybody was really happy with that. Like, my older son really wanted a little boy, and so he was quite thrilled, and I wanted another little boy, so I was quite thrilled. And yeah, it was just beautiful. So there was a few things that I found a little funny this time. And I always kind of make these observations with my baby's births about what I found surprising. I think for me this time, I found it really surprising that I didn't love the water more. I mean, I knew that with my first birth. With my first, I basically, when I got to 10 centimeters, I just had this, like, I have to get out of here squirrely feeling, and so I got out of the tub and then had my baby on the bed, and I didn't feel that squirreliness to get out this time, but I don't think I found the water as relaxing as I expected, and I also think it didn't help that I found the pushing so intense this time. I had music playing this time during the labor, and that was a lot of fun, except none of us bothered to look to see what was playing. It was on pretty low, so nobody bothered to look to see what was playing when the baby was born, and so that kind of bummed me out a bit, because I knew that for my first son. Yeah, and I think for the most part I found it surprising that this was the birth that I've had the most people present, and it was the birth that I enjoyed the most, and I definitely felt that I needed more support. Like with my first son, we had just myself and my husband and our 2 midwives. And with my second son, I had myself, my husband, and then both my midwives were there, and then they switched off, and we had a student midwife. So really, there was still only 4 people in the room, and that felt really right. But this time, we had my husband, myself, my doula, my midwife, and my 2 sons, my 2 older sons, my sister-in-law, my sister, and her daughter, who is about 18 months old. So we had a full house, and it was louder and noisy, but it was also more joyful. It was, you know, it was a definite birth party, and having the kids there was definitely the right call. It just made so much more sense to have them there, and it also made a lot of sense to to have them just see how normal birth could be. And I was amazed. My 18-month-year-old niece, she did not want to leave. It was total like red tent moment. She wanted to be around the women. She wanted to be around the baby. She wanted to watch everything. And yeah, it was just, it felt right. So after the baby was born and we knew it was a boy, I stayed in the tub until the placenta was delivered, and that was about 20 minutes after Arlo was born. And then I got out and had a little check over, and I didn't have any tears or anything, and I felt really good. So after we had had our little snuggle and breastfeed and quiet time with just the baby and my husband and I, everybody came back in for the newborn exam. And we really tried to involve my older son, who's 4.5, in that. So he actually was the person to cut the baby's cord. We had basically left the baby and placenta attached until about 40 minutes after the birth, when my older son helped the midwife cut the cord. And then he helped with the placenta tour and made some placenta art by making handprints on one of the Chuck's pads after touching the maternal side, the rough lumpy side of the placenta. And probably my favorite memory from that is the midwife told him that it was like touching zombie brains. So for the last 3 weeks, basically all we've heard about is how placenta is like zombie brains. Yeah, so, you know, it was really special. And we had another one of my friends come over at that point. We had the lady who was going to encapsulate the placenta come over. And the second midwife actually didn't make it for the birth. She showed up probably about 10 or 15 minutes after Arlo had arrived. So she was also in the room. And basically we had about 10 or 12 people in the room, and it was a total post-birth party. And I know it's not for everybody, but it was great for us. It just, you know, everything just felt so happy and jubilant, and, you know, everything was being celebrated. So it was about this time that we started taking bets on the weight. I think I guessed that the baby was going to be around 7 pounds, 15 ounces. I know one of my midwives, my primary, she guessed he would be 8 pounds and 5 or 6 ounces. And the second midwife, the backup, said that she thought he was going to be 8-12. So they put him in their hanging scale, and of course, what does he end up being but 8-12? So he was my biggest baby by over 1 pound. My middle son was 7 pounds, 1.5 ounces. My first son was 7 pounds, 10 ounces. So yeah, he was definitely my biggest baby to date, and definitely had a lovely, healthy placenta, which I was super happy to see, with a normal cord insertion. Because my second son's cord obviously was marginal, and we had the abruption, and it had some calcification. So it definitely was not the healthiest of placentas. Yeah, so I just, you know, it was a really great time. And then after that, after I got cleaned up, we went and we toasted and we hung out and just had a lovely little visit with our friends and family and our midwives. And yeah, and then, you know, everybody kind of had shuttled out of the house by about, you know, 6:30, you know, about 3 hours after the baby was born, and we were left to cuddle and hang out for the night. And so, yeah, it was definitely, it was so strange. Everything that I wanted, I got. Everything I had asked for and hoped for, I definitely got with that birth. And it's so surreal to think that it's over, and it's so surreal to feel like I feel that my family is complete. Like, I don't know if I ever do want to have another baby, and I definitely don't know if I want to go through another labor again. And I think I'm okay with that at this point. And I don't think I expected to feel that way so quickly, so soon. So there you go. That's my quick labor recap. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments, and I will either do a video response, or I will just respond to your comment where it is. So thanks a lot for listening, and I hope that it was helpful. And if you haven't watched the birth video already, I will link it somewhere around, and check it out, because it's probably my favorite thing that came out of this birth, is actually having photographic evidence of what I'm like in labor. Yeah, so thanks a lot, guys.